Hi, welcome to Eurocentres Online. I'm going to show you over the next few weeks and months, I'm going to show you some nice short but practical, useful videos for improving your English. So this first video, we're going to look at how to get a good score in the IELTS speaking test. So that's something that millions of people want to know how to do. So hopefully it will be very useful. So the most important thing to remember when you want to get a good score is the examiner. What does the examiner want to see? So the examiner has a checklist, and that's the only thing you need to think about. What is important for the examiner's checklist? They use the checklist to score your test. You don't need to think about anything else. The examiner doesn't think about anything else. Only the checklist is important. So we're going to go through the checklist and give you some ideas of what you need to focus on to get a good score. This will really help you. Now, in future videos, we'll look at other English language points. But in this video, we're thinking about how to get a good score in the IELTS speaking test. Okay. So, like many students, you're thinking, I really don't know what I need to do to get a good score. So this is what you need. You need to know what the examiner is looking at when they give you a score. As I said before, nothing else is important. This is a test. They need to give you a test score. So they use a checklist. Now, the checklist has different, let's call them categories. So one is fluency. Fluency is, if you have a question, when you answer, don't say, no, that would give you a bad score for fluency. If you want to get a good score, let's say a level 7 or more, you need to start using fillers. So I'm going to show you soon what do I mean by fillers. I'm going to give you some examples, some nice examples. Okay, secondly, the examiner wants to see good organization. So when you answer a question, where possible, try to give your opinion, try to then give a reason, and then an example. I'll show you this very soon. There's a category for vocabulary and grammar. So what do I mean by vocabulary? Well, we've got idioms. I'll give you an example of an idiom soon. Just 2 or 3 examples of idioms. Try to use synonyms. So don't repeat the same word. Don't just say nice, it is nice, that is nice. Say it was nice, it was really good, it was really interesting, it was fantastic, it was very, very exciting, that kind of thing. Don't repeat words all the time. So collocations, words which go together. So for example, interested in, obsessed with, addicted to. It could be words like keep fit, so common expressions that go together. Grammar, show off your verb tenses. So try to use present tense and past tense. And if possible, try to put in a future verb tense as well. Once again, I'll show you this very soon. Okay, and the last point for grammar, try to use some complex sentences. I'll give you an example. So just for now, I'll say a short sentence. So a level 5 or 6 student would say something like, I think children should not use smartphones at school. How many verbs? Should not use. Okay, so you've got use, that's one verb. A complex sentence could be, if children used smartphones in their education, they could enjoy their classes more. So you've got use, and you've got enjoy. So you've got 2 verbs. So the examiner will be listening for examples of complex sentences. Not every answer, but just 4 or 5 times in your speaking test. And then lastly, pronunciation. The most important thing for pronunciation is, can the examiner understand you? Now, the biggest barrier or wall or problem for understanding are vowel sounds. So that is A, E, I, O, U. It could be short vowel sounds, A, E, U, E, O. It could be long, so air or I or E You need to get those vowel sounds correct to be understood. Also, everyone has their own problem sound. So some people have a problem with the TH. So instead of saying thank you, they might say thank you. Yeah. Or they might have a problem with the R and the L sound. So instead of saying look, they might say rook. So if you have your own problem sound, then you need to work on that before the speaking test. Now, in future videos, I'm going to show you things like how you can improve your pronunciation. We'll have a look at grammar as well. We'll have a look at vocabulary. Okay, so please stay tuned for some future videos where we'll look in more detail at these kind of English language study areas. But for now, for this video, we are going to look at how to get a good score in your IELTS speaking test. And we're just going to focus on the most important thing. What does the examiner want to see? Okay, good. So firstly, let's look at fluency. How can you get a good score in fluency? Because remember, the examiner will give you a score for each of these categories. You'll get a score for fluency, organisation, vocabulary and grammar is 1 score, and then pronunciation. So for example, if you get a 7 for fluency, 7 for organisation, but only a 6 for vocabulary and grammar, and then a 7 for pronunciation, that is not a 7. That would be a level 6.5. That's how it works, okay? So let's look at how you can get a good score for fluency, and then we'll look at the others too. So here we go. Fluency. Look at the green sentences. Imagine in the speaking test, typical question, do you think smartphones are bad for a child's education? Well, in the real world, you might say, or you might just say nothing for a few seconds, just silence, because you're thinking, aren't you? In the real world, that's okay, but not in the speaking test. The IELTS speaking test is not real life. You need to just think about getting a good score. So you need to use fillers. So if you remember here, don't say use fillers. What are fillers? Well, these are fillers in the green. So, well, that's a tricky one. Tricky means difficult because I can see both points of view, but I would say, all right, so while you're thinking, say something. Say something. Okay, now this is at the beginning while you're thinking, but also maybe in the middle of a sentence, you might forget some vocabulary, or you might try to think of a different idea or some way to express something. Don't say because that will bring down your fluency score. So instead, say something like, interested in a school subject, but if they, how can I put it, learn how to play a musical instrument, the examiners will love that. They want to hear nice natural English while you're thinking. Use some nice natural fillers. Okay. Now in future lessons, we'll focus on different fillers you can use both at the beginning and also in the middle of a sentence. Okay, next we've got organisation, opinion, reason, example. So going back to the question, do you think smartphones are bad for a child's education? Well, what's the opinion? Okay, here we go, orange. These kinds of devices, like smartphones, can actually help kids to learn sometimes. Okay, that's my opinion. Now we've got the reason, because you can watch educational videos on them. Give an example. For example, some young learners just aren't interested in a school subject, but if they, how can I put it, learn how to play a musical instrument from a cool YouTube video, they might get up and running. All right, so you've got your orange, opinion, you've got your reason, blue, because, and then you've got your example. Okay, that will really make the examiner happy. Then they can give you a good score for organisation. And that's all you're interested in. How can I get a good score for each of these categories? Okay, next we've got vocabulary and grammar. So let's look at, firstly, let's focus on the vocabulary. So if we go back to our answer here, where's an idiom? Where is an idiom? So we said idioms, try to use idioms maybe 2 or 3 times. Idioms are kind of crazy expressions, crazy vocabulary, but we use them a lot. So you might have heard idioms like, for example, my football team won. I am over the moon. So over the moon means very happy. So it doesn't really mean I am over the moon. Obviously, that's going to be impossible for me at the moment anyway. So here is an example, get up and running. So if children watch cool YouTube videos, it might make their learning more interesting. It might help them to get up and running. So get up and running means to start something new, like a project. Maybe it's difficult at the beginning, but you do something like watch a YouTube video, you like it, and that helps you to have motivation. So help you to have motivation, that means get up and running. So definitely the examiner would notice that, and then they could think about giving you a higher score for your vocabulary. And that's just one example of an idiom. There are many, many more idioms. So in a future lesson, we'll be looking at useful idioms you can use in your IELTS speaking test and also your writing test as well. Okay, also you've got synonyms. So don't repeat words. So in the question, it's do you think smartphones are bad? So you don't want to repeat smartphones. So instead you could say, oh, these kinds of devices, not smartphones, but devices. So kind of has the same meaning, but you show the examiner that you have good vocabulary, so you don't need to keep repeating. You've also got other synonyms as well. So you might have something like child's education, but do you repeat the word child's? Well, let's have a look. Here you got kids, help kids. So you found a synonym of child. And then later on, you might find the word student, all right, or young learners. So that will really impress and give you a good score with the examiner for vocabulary. Okay, collocations. So two words which go together. Here we go. The examiner will be listening for any collocations, especially where you've got an adjective or a verb. So this is an adjective, interested, plus a preposition. So for example, obsessed with, interested in, yeah, good at, bad at, that kind of thing, yeah? All right, moving on to grammar. Variety of tenses and complex sentences. Well, first of all, let's look at complex sentences, shall we? Remember, complex sentences do not have just one verb. That would be too easy. That won't get you a level 7 or more. You need to use either 2 or 3 verbs. So, for example, we've got an if sentence here. So if you look, it says, for example, some young learners just aren't interested in a school subject. But, here we go, complex sentence. If they, how can I put it? If they learn, there's our first verb, learn, how to play a musical instrument from a cool YouTube video, they might get, there's our second verb, up and running. Okay, get up and running. End with the idiom. All right, so this is a complex sentence because it's got 2 verbs, learn and get up. Okay, lastly, pronunciation. We'll move on. We'll talk about the variety of tenses very soon. So this is a complex sentence because you've got 2 verbs, you've got learn, and you've got get up. Now let's talk about verb tenses. We'll talk in more detail in a future video, but what the examiner wants to hear are sometimes don't just use the present, but try and use the past and the future. So for example, for the question, do you think smartphones are bad for a child's education? You could say the present to begin with. So yeah, I think children should use smartphones. Yeah, should use because it helps them to learn from watching videos. Yeah, so it helps present simple. Then you could say the past. For example, when I was at school, sometimes I wasn't interested. That's a past verb. I wasn't interested in some school subjects, but then you can say if I had studied. Oh, that's nice. Past perfect. If I had studied some lessons on YouTube, I would have found them more enjoyable. Yeah, so you've got a nice complex sentence there as well. So you've got present and past. Maybe you could even talk about the future. Always look for opportunities to show the examiner the future as well. So you could say, I think in the future, I think smartphones are going to be used, the future, are going to be used more and more at schools. Okay, so try to show off your verb tenses. Okay, lastly, but not least, we've got pronunciation. So as I mentioned briefly before, vowel sounds, really important. So A, E, I, O, U. So words like, for example, cap, not cup. Yeah, apple, not apple. Not just short sounds, but long sounds as well. So R, yeah, E. Okay, so for example, not bit, but beat. Okay, that kind of thing. The examiner will be listening for your vowel sounds. And as I mentioned lastly, everyone has their own problem sound. So TH, you might have a problem saying this. You might say zis. You might have a problem saying red. You might say lead instead of red. Yeah, V, for example, is a problem for some nationalities. So instead of saying very, you might say, it's a very good violin. You might say it's a very good violin. So every nationality has its own problem sound. So in future lessons, we'll look at some techniques and some good videos as well for improving your own particular personal pronunciation problem. Okay, so thanks very much for listening to this Eurocentres Online video. My name is David Leverick, and please stay tuned for future videos.